Hello, welcome to the payment processing webinar. My name is Kristen Corey, and I'm going to be facilitating today's webinar. So let's talk about the agenda for our time together. The instructional videos you've received introduce you to the individual components of our payment processing suite. And in our time together, I am going to show you how to use those components together. You can use them individually. We are recommending that you use them in an integrated fashion so that you're using the payment processing suite optimally. And so that's what we'll review together. I'm also going to cover how do you get started now that you have payment processing set up in your cabinet, or perhaps you don't have it set up just yet, but you will in the near future. We will process some online payments together through each component of the payment processing suite. And we're going to take some time to reconcile your EZCare2 system with your payment gateway, or if you're on EZCamp2, it would be your EZCamp2 system and the payment gateway. You should have received in that email with those instructional videos, there were some attachments to that email, and one of the attachments pertained to reconciling your click-to-pay payments. And we'll review that exercise today together. Before we move into the demonstration, the live demonstration, I'm going to touch base on this topic of convenience fees. So the first agenda item would be, what is a convenience fee? So a convenience fee is an additional charge to your families for that quote-unquote convenience of using a particular method of payment. So for instance, $2 for the convenience of paying online with a credit card. Or in other words, a convenience fee allows you to pass along payment processing fees to your family. So now that you know what a convenience fee is, you might be wondering, well, should I charge a convenience fee? If your organization would be unable to offer online payments without using a convenience fee, then it can certainly make sense to use a convenience fee. However, it is important to realize that convenience fees are likely to reduce the percentage of your families who pay online. So, in a sense, you are discouraging what is typically the easiest and most convenient method of fee collection. So instead of charging a convenience fee, we would recommend a different approach. We would encourage you to factor the cost of manually processing payments, let's say $2 to $3 each, into your decision about what, if any, convenience fee to charge. So how do you proceed now that you have these facts? Certainly there are no problems with offering families a discount for paying in a preferred way. So one of the best strategies to avoid an explicit convenience fee, and an explicit convenience fee would be your families are seeing a transaction on their invoice, that is, this is the convenience fee. And so to avoid that explicit convenience fee would be to simply build the cost of online payments into your standard fee structure. Now, if in the end you decide to use a convenience fee, you'll want to make sure that your convenience fee has been incorporated into your click-to-pay form. The click-to-pay form can handle the convenience fee by itself, but your click-to-pay form is not naturally set up with a convenience fee. Now for EFT and InstaCharge payments, those two components of the payment processing suite, EFT and InstaCharge, you would actually need to add a convenience fee to the family's ledgers before you process either an EFT payment or an InstaCharge payment. That fee, that convenience fee, is not automatically going to be applied to the family's ledger. So you would want to reach out to our support team to learn more about how you would apply a group posting for, say, an EFT family, or how you would manually update individual ledgers with the convenience fee for your families who have opted to make a payment through InstaCharge. Okay, so that's all of what I'm going to address with regard to convenience fees. Now what we're going to do is move into the live demonstration, in which case I'm going to close out of a PowerPoint and go into EZCare2. Now, before I start showing you much of anything, what I want to do is just talk to you about these three components, introduce you to them verbally. If you've seen the instructional videos, you have already gained initial exposure to the components, but I just want to refresh your memory. So our payment processing suite has three components. We have EFT, and that would be a recurring payment that you initiate, you as the EZCare2 or EZCare2 administrator. The second one would be InstaCharge, and InstaCharge payments, those are one-time payments initiated by you, the EZCare2 or EZCare2 administrator. And then the third component would be Click-to-Pay. And Click-to-Pay payments, those are one-time payments, and they're initiated by the parent. Now, regardless of which processing method, EFT, InstaCharge, or Click-to-Pay, regardless of which processing method you choose, the payment processing fees are identical across all of those methods. Now, as I mentioned, you can use the components of the payment processing suite individually, or you can use them all together. And that's what we'll review in our time together is, okay, how would you use them together? So the preferred processing order would be EFT. You encourage your families to sign up for EFT. It's easier for your families because they do not initiate the payment on a recurring basis. You do. But ahead of time, your families would agree to sign up for EFT. And so you would have received a document. When you received the instructional videos, you would have also received a document titled Easy EFT Tips for Signing Up Parents. And so you can use that Easy EFT Tips for Signing Up Parents to come up with the form that you hand out to your families. You can customize that form to meet your specific needs, but you would hand that form out to your families and encourage them to sign up for EFT. Now, it's possible, and it's likely that not everyone would sign up for EFT, but even if they did sign up for EFT and you begin processing using EFT, it's possible you're going to have rejected payments for whatever reason, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. In which case, then you would do a one-time payment with InstaCharge, and that's a payment you're initiating. And then for those families who are just a little uneasy with signing up for EFT, then they would be good candidates for Click-to-Pay. And those families would access the Click-to-Pay form through their invoice. And so they would be initiating the payment. But as you can imagine, it's far more effective and efficient if you have families sign up for EFT because you have total control of when those payments are initiated. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this. So we're going to pretend that you've handed out this EFT sign-up form, authorization form, to your families, and you have received some forms back of families saying, oh, I'd love to take advantage of this new option for making payments. Once you get those forms back, and those forms would have a place for families to put in payment specifics. Oh, you know what, I'm going to use this credit card. Here's my credit card number. Here's the expiration date and such. So what you would do with that information is you'd go into your cabinet. I'm going to open up my children and families cabinet. I'm going to my family drawer. And then I am going to go to the family ledger. So let me go to a family, Edwina Edwards. And Edwina in the past has said, I am interested in using EFT. And so I would have taken her form and gone to payment accounts. And I would have added a credit card or bank account. And so I would click Add Credit Card, for instance. And this is the Parent 1 information right here in the billing information section. And down below in the account information section, that's where I would have entered whatever payment specifics she put in the authorization form. I would enter right here. And then I would choose to make it a default. And I would store that payment method. Now let me just pause for a moment and give you a best practice recommendation with regard to entering credit card specifics. Now when it comes to the expiration date, as you can see, there's a red asterisk here. And that means that field is required, as you can see in this footnote down here. Represents a required field. So you need to enter an expiration date. But rest assured, when the expiration date on a saved credit card comes and goes, so that expiration date has passed, as long as Edwina Edwards activates the new card that she receives in the mail with that same card number, as long as she activates that new card, you don't have to worry that you have an expiration date that is in the past. The card would still work, and you'd be able to process payments even though the expiration date in EZCare2 is in the past. However, when it comes to CVV numbers, these security codes usually on the back of the credit card, these numbers, first of all, the field is not required, so you don't need to enter it. Second of all, these codes change on the cards. And if the code that you have in EZCare2 does not match the code on the card, that payment will fail. That being said, I would recommend that you not enter the CVV number. You are actually not saving anything from using that CVV number. Sometimes merchants are granted, or merchants extend a discount if the CVV code, that security code, is used. But that's not the case for you, so I would recommend not entering the CVV number when you enter credit card specifics. Okay? Let's click cancel here. Okay, so when I saved the credit card specifics previously, you can see that this payment grid was updated. And we saved the description, that credit card number, in an encrypted fashion. We have the expiration date. Now the Vault ID, that is basically what we are passing between EZCare2 or EZCamp2 and your payment gateway. So the fact is this whole process is very secure, because if we take that Vault ID out of context, it is meaningless to anyone. It's not a credit card number. It's not going to get anyone anywhere. However, with the integration that exists between EZ2 and the payment gateway, this Vault ID is meaningful in that context. So that's why this is a very secure way of processing online payments and securing payment specifics. Easy EFT default is checked, so that just means when we go to process EFT that this credit card number would be the default payment method pulled up. It's also set for default for InstaCharge, so if we go to process an InstaCharge payment, which is that one-time payment, this credit card would be the default card to show in the payment form. Okay, so that first step is you get that EFT authorization form back from your families. You come into the payment account grid and you either add bank accounts or add credit cards, and you update the account grid per family. So we can see the family's name up at the top left corner of that window. Now after you enter the payment specifics for your families, what you might want to do is go look at a report. So I'll close out of here and we'll go to AR and then down to AR reports. And we have, under System Accounts Receivable, we have a Payment Account Information Report. So under System Accounts Receivable, we have a Payment Account Information Report. I'm going to preview this report. And what this report allows you to see is the information stored in the payment account grid. So although I would not be able to see the full credit card number or bank account number, I could at least confirm what I've entered, the family's ledger, the draft method, and all of these details. So that's just a report that might help you in doing a little quality assurance. Okay, so let's close out of there. So the foundation is laid. I've entered the account specifics for the various families who have gotten the authorization form back to me. Now let me come back into my cabinet. And I'm going to go to the family's ledger, and I'm actually going to go to Edwina Edwards again. Now, as you can see, she has an outstanding balance of $725, and I have the new tuition posted as of yesterday. So we're ready to process payments. We're going to process EFT first because that's the preferred order in using the payment processing components optimally. So you would close your cabinet and you would first run a backup. You would do that through Office Administration, Chapter 2, Backup Cabinets. We're going to click Open. And typically, I would click this square button with 3 dots with the ellipse and enter my file name there. But I can see my whole file name right here, so I could also do this. I'm using the naming convention for my backups of the day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So at any given time, I only have 5 backups on hand for the most part. And I'll kick that off real quickly. So that will serve as our safety net, and that's the best practice to run a quick backup. I'm running a backup of all my cabinets. I only happen to have 2 cabinets, but one is a test cabinet. So it's really a little phony baloney there. So it's possible that you'll have more cabinets than I. Okay, great. So I'll click Done. Now to process EFT, I would go to AR. Now again, your cabinet should be closed. I go to AR, and I go down to Transmit Easy EFT, and I go to Safe Payments Gateway. Transmit Easy EFT, Safe Payments Gateway. And let me just pause and say, for those of you who had an opportunity to watch those instructional videos, everything I'm reviewing with you today is covered in those videos. The material is presented a little differently, and as you can imagine, those 3 videos, they're individual videos, so they don't show how to use the payment processing suite in an integrated fashion. But if you want a reminder on now, oh, how did Kristen process EFT? Where did she go? You can just kick off that video. It's less than 5 minutes, I think, and you can get a refresher. Okay, so I'm under AR, Transmit Easy EFT, Safe Payments Gateway. The first step is to generate transactions. Now the amount that will be charged, or rather paid through EFT, would be, I can choose to do it a balance through, which would be the balance through today. That would be the default. I could also do a value in the field. So let's say you, at the beginning of the school year, you post the annual charge to your family's ledger. You can do that. It's most likely, though, on a monthly basis, for instance, they would not, I mean, they're just going to pay a monthly amount, in which case you could have a formula field, and in that formula field, you could have that monthly amount, in which case the amount that you would process for payment on a monthly basis, you would pull from a value in the field, from that formula field. Ultimately, though, it's easier in this sense to just post the charges for that pay period, and then the amount that they would pay, you would just automatically pull it in through this field right here by saying, hey, pull the balance through today, or whatever the date is that you would use. Generate transactions criteria. So the date to transfer the funds will be today. So I'm looking at the balance as of today, and then I want the transfer to take place today. I can use a selection criteria if I have need to. If I'm going to be processing families in different ways. So for instance, I recently was working with a client, and they offered 2 payment options to their families. They could do monthly payments, or they could do bi-weekly payments. So they had an identifier on the ledger that would categorize whether this is a monthly family or bi-weekly, in which case then they would use a selection criteria to just filter out the one population versus the other, because that would then just grab the families that would need to be grabbed to be processed at that particular time. As you can see, we're going to process bank accounts and credit cards at the same time. So step 2 is for payment transactions. When I click Next, I'm asked, do you want to erase all existing payments and generate new payments to submit and post. So the existing payments are the payments from last time I processed EFT, which happened to be last Tuesday. So the answer to this question is yes, I certainly do want to erase the existing payments. Those are dated, and I want fresh new payments generated based on the criteria I have already designated here in step 1. So I click yes. So here's what I have. These are the families who have outstanding balances and have EFT as a default designated. I can edit the amount if I want. So if Indiana Icorn contacted me before I started processing, right, and said, oh my goodness, this month I'm not going to be able to afford the full outstanding balance of $350, and I can only handle $200. So I can change this amount here. The account type is defaulting to the default account type in the account grid that we looked at earlier. And the category defaults based on the account type. So it's a bank draft because I'm using a checking account, a bank account. And for this family, it's the account type of Visa. I could change this if they had other payment specific saved in the account grid. And I could certainly select another payment method, or excuse me, payment type. And then credit card is the default because Visa is a credit card. And then you have these other details over here. And you can certainly type in a comment if you wanted to, so on and so forth. You could delete a family from here. If Edwina contacted me and said, I can't, oh no, please don't charge, right? Okay. If that's an option, you can certainly cut out rows. And you can add. So I have other families here. If Connie called and said, yep, you can go ahead and process one for me, she then would appear and I could edit the amount right here. So after you adjust this grid as you would like, based on perhaps what you've heard from your various families, then you would click next. You can see a summary down here in the bottom. And step next is when we're in step 3 and we're getting to the point of submitting transactions. So the batch is not submitted yet. You could certainly print the posting report. You get an idea as to what would be submitted total-wise. We're going to go ahead and click Submit. And those payments are being transmitted right now. Okay, so let's talk about how credit card payments and bank account payments work in the settlement. So credit card payments are processed in real time. So what that means is you're going to find out right away if any credit card payments failed. They may fail, for instance, in that scenario where a credit card expiration date is in the past, in which case you've got a little bit of a problem if the cardholder did not activate the new card. So if the cardholder did not activate the new card, well then that payment will not go through. And so that could be an example of an EFT payment that was rejected. In that case, it was a credit card payment. Now, when it comes to credit card payments, since they are processed in real time and such that you're finding out right away if they were rejected, any rejected credit card payments would not be reflected on the family's ledger. Only successful credit card payments are posted to the family's ledger. For bank accounts, the story's a little different because, as you may know from working with paper checks, there is a settlement period. So that could be 4 to 5 business banking days. That being said, when you process EFT, it's going to look like all bank account payments were successful. And so a successful payment would be posted to the family ledger. However, in 4 to 5 business banking days, when settlement occurs, you may get word back from your payment gateway that some of those bank account payments were not successful, in which case you would need to go to the family's ledger and post a corrective entry. Okay, so I'll click Done here. The batch was submitted. And what I can do now is I can print the posting report. And that's actually a good practice. It does say in the top right corner that this batch is submitted. And so the posting report, I click in the bottom left. And I'll preview that report so you can see it. And so this is the report that would show you any rejects. And what you want to do is you want to print this report, because this is also showing you what was posted in EZCare2 and what was posted in your gateway. So it's somewhat of a reconciling report. It's reflecting what already took place in EZCare2 and what's reflected in your gateway. So you would like to perhaps have this on audit trail. Now, if you are trying to minimize how much paper you're creating, you could probably print this to a PDF, and then you could just save it electronically. Okay? So let's go ahead and close that preview. And we'll click Done. And done. So that was EFT. Now, you would have that posting report in your hand, and you would identify any payments that were unsuccessful, so those rejects. And again, those would only be credit card payments that were rejected for whatever reason. So for those, you would go into your cabinet, and you'd go into the family drawer, and you'd go to Family's Ledger. Let's take a look at Edwina Edwards. And we're going to go to the ledger. And in this case, we can see that her payment went through just well, perfectly at the full $725. Let's go to Indiana Icorn. I think that's the one that I changed the payment. I did. And so she had an outstanding balance. I'll just scroll this up so we can kind of focus in. She had an outstanding balance of $350, but only $200 was processed. Well, let's pretend that this $200 payment didn't even go through. I mean, regardless, she has an outstanding balance. But if that $200 payment did not go through, that's where you would go to using the second payment method, which would be InstaCharge. So you would be looking at this EFT report, any rejects, and if we pretend that this was a reject, a credit card reject from EFT, you would contact Indiana. You have her on the phone and you say, well, Indiana, unfortunately your payment did not go through this month. I'm going to need another payment account from you. While you have her on the phone, she whips out her credit card, for instance, and then you can use InstaCharge, which is that one-time payment that you initiate. Or maybe she's even standing in front of you. So you click the InstaCharge button, and then this little payment form opens. It, again, pulls in the parent one information in the billing information section. And down here in the account information, it pulled in the payment specifics that were saved. Now the fact is those payment specifics already failed for EFT, so you would not want to process them again. Instead, you would say, oh, you have your new card? Great. And then you would enter that new card number right there, and process a payment in that very moment as a one-time payment. And while you have her on the phone, you would then say, oh, now could I use this payment specific, this payment account for your future payments? And then that's when you want her to kind of agree, right? Because you need to save a new payment account for the next time you process payments, because the last one you had on file failed. And so that being said, you don't want to let her off the hook, shall we say, right? You want to keep her on the hook as long as you can. Okay, so we're going to put in our credit card specifics into the form. And in this case, we'll say 411. I'm going to put in a valid expiration date, whatever she tells me. I'm not going to put in that CVV number because we don't recommend it. And then you can edit the amount as you see fit. Now, you do want to save. You want to make that a default. You can make it a default for InstaCharge is what this will make it a default for. But what that does is it's going to save these payment specifics, this account information in the account grid. So I'll click Submit. Okay, and so we can see InstaCharge payment is reflected right there. That's great, okay. If I go to a payment account grid, I see that new credit card is right here. It's set for the InstaCharge default. What I need to do is also set it for the EFT default, because I would say, could I use this for your recurring payment next month? Oh yes, go ahead. Now, it may make sense also to get rid of the checking account because that already failed. I mean, now checking accounts are a little different. So if the checking account failed, it may be insufficient funds. But if the reason for the rejection is like it's an invalid account number or whatever, you want to get it out of your account grid. So if it's appropriate, then you would remove it and get it out of the way so it's not mistakenly used in the future. Okay? All right. So that would be, you're using EFT, the first payment method. Any rejects from EFT, you would process one-time payments through InstaCharge. And then you probably have some families who didn't feel comfortable with EFT, and so they were sent an invoice to make a payment through your click-to-pay form. And so then that's a scenario where your families initiate the payment. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go look at Kristen Corey, who has a balance of $750. Now, if I want to send Kristen Corey an invoice, I can go right here to the drop-down arrow, and I can go to Click to Pay Invoice button. In a moment, I'll show you how to send to the masses, because clearly you're not going to go family by family and send an individual invoice. But I can go to the Click to Pay Invoice button. It opens up the report, Click to Pay Invoice button, and it's already designated for Kristen Corey. The transaction dates that I would recommend you enter would be a 90-day date range. 90 dates will allow your families to get a very full picture as to activity on their ledger, because if you only do 30 days, and if it just so happens that the family has an outstanding balance but had no activity in the past 30 days, then it might give reason for families to pick up the phone and call you. Oh, I see you have an outstanding balance, but I'm not sure I understand why. So you want to minimize those types of calls. So a transaction date range of 90 days is good. In the bottom left, I want to point out selection criteria. Now let me just say this Click to Pay Invoice button, which should be created in your cabinet. When payment processing is set up in your cabinet, this report is created for you. And it is located in a report folder called Online Payment Processing Reports. And we'll go look at that in just a moment so you know. But we have a selection criteria, and that's here at the bottom left corner above the Save button. And it says Invoice Email is not blank. So if I move this down, you can see there's an invoice email field on the ledger. That field most likely was added to your cabinet or is in your cabinet. If it was already there, obviously we didn't need to add it. But that's most likely the email field to be used for sending out invoices, because that email field is intended to store more than one email address. You might have a parent 1 email field, you may have a parent 2 email field, but the invoice email field is intended to store multiple email addresses in case more than one family member wants to receive the invoice. So that's the first criteria, that invoice email field cannot be blank. And the second criteria is that the ledger balance has to be greater than 0. And there's no point to send them the invoice with the Click to Pay link if the balance is 0, because they would not be making payment if they had a 0 balance. So I have me selected, and I'll send an email. The email address field that would be used would be that invoice email. We're going to include the Click to Pay link. This would all be set up in this report in your cabinet already. And then there's some other details. I can certainly have a note here if I wanted. So I'm going to click email. And that's fine. I've chosen to include a child-based field value for a non-child-based report without a child selection. That's okay. And that's thinking. And let me see, I should receive that invoice right here. I'm going to bring it over to your world so you can see it. So do you see that I have an invoice there? And that's what the families would receive, and then could pay off whatever amount they want to pay off. And here's how that would happen. They'd click invoice, and let me bring over my invoice and let you see that. There you go. You can see my invoice right there. And so do you see where I can click pay your bill online? So when I click there, what that's going to do is open up my click to pay form. Now, these click to pay forms are family specific in the sense that the form looks the same, but as you can imagine, the first name, last name, and transaction amount, those are specific to the family. And so this is the parent one, first name and last name, those pertain to parent one, and the transaction amount would be the outstanding balance due. Now, I can edit this outstanding balance to something less, and then when I click next, this is where I would enter my payment specifics. Now, the payment options is pulling in a Visa, and that's because I'm going to minimize this for a moment, and I'm going to close this for a moment. Let's see. I'm going to go back to EZCare2 for just a moment and show you why I have those at Visa there. If I go to my payment accounts grid, you'll see I have CTP use checked for one of my account types. So one of my payment accounts has CTP use checked. So what does that mean? Well, that means that when the click to pay form is accessed, it will already have one of my accounts, my payment accounts, saved there in an encrypted fashion, which makes it super easy for your families. Or if I want, as a parent, if I want to use a different credit card number, I can certainly do that, and I'll have opportunity to enter a new account number. And if I do opt to use a new credit card number, and then I click Store Account with SafeSave, then my account specifics would be captured behind the scenes and brought into the account grid in EZCare2. But in this case, I'm actually just going to go with the card on file, and I'm going to click Process Payment. And then your families would have opportunity to print off a receipt letting them know that a payment was submitted. Okay? Now that payment doesn't just miraculously show up in EZCare2 or EZCare2. You actually will need to download that payment. And so we're going to take a look at that. So I'm going to close my cabinet. And on your toolbar, you have some icons that have WL. And WL stands for web link. And Click to Pay is a web link form. And that's web link is our online form product name. So when this bright green arrow, well, when the arrow pointing down is bright green, which it is right now, and you click there, you would see that you have something pending for, yes, your Click to Pay form. So this is my Click to Pay form, and I have 2 transactions pending. And when I click the 2 pending, I see this bright red message, entries less than 20 minutes old, may not be finalized, and are not yet available for download. So that explains why when I click the 2, I actually only see 1 pending. And that's a payment that was actually made last Tuesday that I've been negligent in my downloads and I did not download yet. So if a payment is made on a Click to Pay form within the past, 20 minutes, so we just made it a minute or 2 ago, then I'm not able to download until 20 minutes have passed. So when I click on that 2 it's likely that I will see less than 2, or I may not even get to the screen if both of those transactions were just submitted minutes ago. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to download this payment. It's a $99 payment. And I'm going to first take a look at the report. So in the bottom right corner, we have the print report option. So we'll print report, and I'm going to preview the report so you can get an idea. So here is a summary of what's pending and downloadable. And in the bottom right corner, I can see a total. So I would print this report. This shows me what's on the web link side, what's on my click to pay form side. And I'm about to bring this into my cabinet. So I print this report, and it's a payment for Connie Connors. And so after we bring in this payment, we'll then go over to Connie Connors' ledger and take a quick peek. Okay, so I'll click download and import, download and import. This is where I have an opportunity to run a backup. So I would say yes if I had not already run a backup. Before you come in here, you could certainly run a full backup. And then the import kicks off. Now, I have one pending. Now, when I click on that one pending, the window just flashes. And that's because that tells me whatever is pending was submitted in the past 20 minutes. And I need to wait at least 20 minutes before I can download. So when I click done, that arrow is still bright green. When I've downloaded everything that's pending, it's not as bright. So I'm going to go into Children and Families, and I'm going to go into my family drawer. And when I look at Connie Connors and her ledger, I'll scroll down so you can see it. Here is my, oh, wait a minute, let me scroll up. It was actually a January 17th payment. And so it was this order 24, it was the $99, right? It wasn't that last payment made from today, but it was the click to pay payment. You see that blue highlighted payment? That's what I just imported, the $99 payment. Okay, so we have just looked at using EFT, using InstaCharge, and using click to pay. Now in our time remaining, we are going to talk about reconciling with EZCare2 or EZCamp2 in your gateway. Now we have 3 payment methods: EFT, InstaCharge, click to pay. EFT does not need to be reconciled because that EFT posting report, if you remember, that report basically does the reconciliation for you because the report shows you this is what went into your cabinet, this is what went into the gateway. We don't have such a report for InstaCharge and for click to pay. Now what we have right now for click to pay, what we've printed off, would be the download report. And that was just showing us what was on the web link side and what we were going to bring into our cabinet. But it speaks, in no way does it speak to what's on the gateway. So I'm going to close out of the cabinet just to keep my screen as clean as possible for you. I'm going to go to AR and then down to AR reports. In AR reports, I'm going to collapse this initial folder, and I just want to draw your attention to this online payment processing reports. And that folder most likely would have been set up in your cabinet if payment processing has been set up. If you still are waiting for payment processing to be set up in your cabinet, then that folder will appear in the near future. It has 3 reports. It has the click to pay invoice button, which is actually what we just used when I sent out an individual invoice. You would come here, though, if you're going to send the invoice out to the masses, more than one. We also have 2 transaction reports. And these transaction reports are basically modeled off of your revenue summary report, which is a system accounts receivable report. So we're going to first look at the click to pay transactions report. So this is, again, the revenue summary report, but what I have done and what has been done in your cabinet if payment processing has been set up is this report was saved with only the click to pay category selected. Print transaction detail also selected. And what we would do is we would run this. Now in this case, we really want to focus on a click to pay payment that was made on the 17th. That's what we imported. So let's preview the report for that. And I always try to make some complex scenarios to share, and I really shouldn't. There was a payment made on the 17th that I downloaded into my cabinet last week. The $99 payment is what we just imported today. Now, as you get going, let me say what you should do, because what you're seeing is not totally what you should do. What I would recommend is, as you receive click-to-pay payments, if you're going to use that option and offer that to your families, is I would say import them a full day's worth. So for instance, you receive click-to-pay payments on the 16th. I would say on the 17th, you would then come into school and you would download all of your January 16th click-to-pay payments. That way, it's going to make reconciling much easier for you as you get going, because then you focus on one day at a time and you focus on the full day, right? So if you're handling these downloads of click-to-pay payments all in at one time, so on the 17th, I'm looking at all of the 16th. Because if I download the January 16th click-to-pay payments at the end of my day, I mean, a family could make a click-to-pay payment at 10 o'clock at night on the 16th. So if you do all of your 16 click-to-pay payments, if you download them on the 17th, then you can then focus in on just reconciling for, say, the 16th, one day. So in this case, I would print off this report, and we're going to go look in the gateway, and we're going to reconcile to the $99. That's what I just imported. Now, the same report exists for InstaCharge transactions. I'm going to take a look at that. In this case, the category is InstaCharge payment, and that's what's selected, InstaCharge payment. Now, the transaction date in this case would be today, because I made an InstaCharge payment today. And here's that Indiana iCorn payment of $150, and I would want to reconcile to the gateway, right? So this is what's in my cabinet. Now I want to confirm that that's in the gateway. Okay, so I print out my reports. I have them in front of me. I'm going to close out of my reports, and I'm going to show you how to access the gateway. Okay, so I have my cabinet selected. I'm going to go under AR, and then I'm going to go down to Access Safe Payments Gateway. Access Safe Payments Gateway. Mine is a test account. Yours is not. Yours in the top left would say probably EZCare2 or EZCare2. On the left-hand side in the main menu, you'll go under Trans Reports and you'll go down to Reports. Go down to Reports. That's where you would really spend time if you're coming to the gateway. Transaction Snapshot is up at the top section, and I'm going to select my group by to be processing method. Processing methods are EFT, InstaCharge, Click-to-Pay. I'm also going to change my start date. And in this case, I'm going to do the 17th because we want to look at that click-to-pay payment I brought in on the 17th. Well, we brought it in today, but it was made on the 17th. So I click Submit. And so click-to-pay, I have a count of two. And if you remember on my report, I had two. One, I think, was for $990, and one was for $99. And so you would basically look at your click-to-pay transactions report, and you would tie to the count and the amount. And if there's not a match, then you have a magnifying glass to the left of the processing method. And so I click on the magnifying glass, and then I can view these transactions. And that would give me some more detail. I can actually see who made the payment and the amount that was made. If I click on the ID, I can drill down even further and see more detail if I needed to. Okay, I'm going to go back to Trans Report Center Reports, where we began, and change the group by to processing method again. And this time I'm going to change my start date and I'm going to focus on one day at a time. Reconciling, I think as you get going, it'll be easier if you focus one day at a time. Click Submit. And these are the payments. Now, I already submitted EFT, and if I wanted to, I could certainly look at my paper printout or my report and confirm how many I submitted. But I also have Click-to-Pay. Now, the one count for Click-to-Pay, that was the one that we just made together. I made a payment on that Click-to-Pay form, but I couldn't download it because 20 minutes had not elapsed. So it is reflected on my gateway, just not in EZCare2 yet. InstaCharge, that's that one-time payment I initiated, that is in my cabinet. It's on the ledger. And so I would just look here at the totals and I say, yep, I had one and the total was $150. I'm good to go. again, if these numbers don't match to the reports I have, then I would use the magnifying glass to the left of the processing method, and then I can view these transactions to drill down a little deeper, in which case then I can tie to the customer number. Now, if you get to this point that you're drilling down and you have identified a transaction that may be reflected in your cabinet but not in your gateway, or vice versa, or something like that, these are total anomalies. But if you get to that point where you have a disconnect and you've narrowed it down as to, oh yeah, this is missing, whether on my gateway or whether on the EZCare2 side, at that point, you're not expert detective. You've done a lot of work. And at that point, you pick up the phone and call support. Here's what I've uncovered. I have a discrepancy. Could you help me get to the root cause? And so that's where they can help you. But you've already done a lot of work in going through that exercise of reconciling. So as you get going, it's imperative, and you may already know this, but it's definitely imperative that you're reconciling between EZCare2, EZCamp2, and your gateway. You always want to make sure that they're matching up. And you might be throwing your bank statements in there too. Now, if you're throwing your bank statements in there, trans reports, I'm going back to reports. If you throw your bank statements in there, you're probably going to want to focus on settlement batch, because the settlement batch is what is going to reflect on your bank statement. Your bank statement is not going to have these individual payments, oh, for Connie Connors, oh, for Indiana Icorn and Edwina Edwards. Those names and those dollar amounts are not going to show up individually on your bank statement. You would have that in your settlement batches. So I'm working in test data, so none of my payments are settling because it's a test world, but you will have settlement batches, and that's what would be reflected in your bank statement. So that is all we have to cover in our time together. One thing I want to draw your attention to once again is that email you received with regard to registering for this webinar. If you want to revisit any of this material again, I encourage you to preview those instructional videos about EFT, InstaCharge, and Click to Pay, and the payment processing resources that were also included. Those payment processing resources will help you with downloading and reconciling Click to Pay payments, which we reviewed in our time together. The resources also include that easy EFT tips for signing up parents. And lastly, which we did not review, this third item, would be processing refunds via the SafeSafe Payments Gateway. So if you have that case that you need to process a refund, we do have that resource in the email that you've received. And so you can certainly reference it, but you could also reach out to our support team and they can assist you. Okay, well, I hope that you found our time together fruitful in exposing you to this new resource that you have set up in your cabinet. I think the more exposure you have, the faster you're going to get to that point of understanding what all you have at your fingertips. You are more than welcome to attend the webinar next Tuesday. It's a free webinar. You can attend as often as you want, but you can also re-watch those videos or watch those videos. And lastly, you can reach out to our support team and they can assist you as well. Thanks again, and have a great day.